Hi, I'm Gary Fogle and welcome to our show, and I'll introduce you to this guy in just a little bit. Before I get to that, I want to tell you that in this show you will meet athletes and teams and people involved in sports that you've probably never heard of, but stories that I certainly hope you'll find interesting and entertaining. We'll get to all that, but first of all, let me introduce you to this guy.
I love baseball. I've loved it since I was a kid.
His name is Patrick O'Brien. He's working out on a rare mild day in February in his backyard in Fairdale, just outside of Louisville. Patrick is getting ready for the upcoming baseball season. Not softball, but baseball. He plays in a 45 and over league, and he easily meets the age requirement. You see, Patrick is 72. That's right, 72 years old. Or, in his case, 72 years young.
My first season in this league was 2013. And from the time I had played in high school until that year, 2013, it had been 51 years since I picked up a baseball. I played a lot of softball and other sports in between, but that's a long time, and I told the guys I just wanted to take a little rest. I'm going to go through all my positions and pitches here, which was what I normally do.
Patrick is also a pitcher. Throws a fastball, curve, and changeup. He says his fastball has never been clocked, but he throws it fast enough to be effective. And there was a time on days when he pitched, the coach wouldn't let him bat.
I love to bat.
And you switch hit.
I switch
You're a switch hitter.
I switch hit. Last year I batted .326, I think. And at one point I got 8 hits in a row. Good solid hits. And the coach wasn't, when I was pitching, he would not let me bat for a long time. He didn't want me to. This was last year.
He does not want to come out of a baseball game. Ever, never does he want to come out.
That coach is David Bodine. He says it seemed logical to not let Patrick bat on days he pitched.
He went one game back. He wasn't pitching, so he went like 4 for 4. And I'm still not going to let him hit. He needs to rest when he's pitching. You know, he was 72 last year. 72 years old. You know, it's July, 90 degrees, hot. You know, I'm going to let the guy rest. I'm not going to have him run the bases. And next game he went like 2 for 3, and then that game after that, I think he pitched and got a couple of hits. And then the game after that, he got a couple of hits, and he was batting like 700 batting average. And so the game after that, he pitched, and I looked at him, I said, "You win. you can hit. I'm never going to not let you hit again. You can go ahead and hit when you pitch, okay? So you've proved your point."
This takes about 3 or 4 minutes.
Patrick has a workout routine to help keep his body young, but he says staying active year-round is the main thing.
I run, I golf. I try to always walk and carry my own bag when I golf. I golfed about 2 weeks ago, and I just love it. 2 weeks ago, I ran up all the hills just for fun when I was walking, and stuff like that. And I'm playing basketball this year. I played last year. I played basketball on my church team. I played a lot of basketball when I was younger, and I like to go to Iroquois Park and jog around that 3.1 mile loop. I go up to the high school and I run sprints and run half miles and miles and stuff like that. And I like to fish. I love to fish. I fished my whole life.
Patrick has read a book on pitching by Satchel Paige. He even incorporates a Satchel Paige windup into his routine in games. Says it helps keep batters off balance. And when traveling to games out of town, he drives his 1993 van which had 228,000 miles on it when he bought it. He doesn't know how many it has now. In the back of the van, he has a bunk where he sleeps when on the road. No motel for Patrick. You work out here in your backyard. Do the neighbors think you're nuts?
Probably. I have a really good relationship with my neighbors, and I think they like to see me do it. I do it a lot, and it's kind of weird, you know, a 72-year-old man out throwing baseball. I mean, what in the world's going on?
Patrick is married, but his wife did not want to be on camera. So I asked him what she thought about him still playing. Does your wife think you're nuts?
Sort of. But she appreciates it. She used to go to my basketball games when I played a lot of basketball. And she still goes to the games, the baseball games. And she'll sit there in the hot sun, and it's 90 degrees and the sun beating down. It's so hot you don't even want to get out of the vehicle. And she'll pull up there and sit there and watch the whole game. She doesn't leave. And I really appreciate her for that. She cheers too. The guys talk about how loud she cheers for me and all the guys, and she's a lot of fun. And my kids go, my grandkids go sometimes.
When are you going to call it quits?
Well, I thought about that a lot. They asked me that on the team last year, and I said I had a goal of playing till I was at least 80. And the coach said I wouldn't be surprised if you played till you were 90. But I don't know about that.
You know, there's been a couple of times where there's been line drives back toward the mound, and they hit him, and he'll you know, fall down, and he gets right back up. You know, where if it had hit me, I'm out of the game, okay? But he's tough. He's played with bruises. He's played, you know, where his ribs are black and blue or his legs black and blue.
I'll quit when I get to the ballpark and I can no longer compete and actually make a difference in the game, batting and pitching or fielding. I play some third base and outfield. When I start to, you know, go downhill and not be able to compete, I'll probably quit playing and maybe hang around the league, help manage or stuff like that. But I don't know. The good Lord knows when I'll quit. But I tell my wife all the time, you know, even though I can do this when I'm 72, I don't take it for granted. I could wake up one day and have an illness or an injury, and that'd be it.
But for now, he plans on being on the field when the season begins in early June. There's no place he'd rather be. Our next stop takes us to Lloyd Gardner's basement. Now, Lloyd Gardner was the trainer for the Kentucky Colonels back in the old ABA. He was the trainer for the Colonels for 7 of the 9 years they existed. And he has a lot of Colonels memorabilia right here in his basement. And it is impressive.
There's a 2-on-1 break. This is Issel down the lane, and he's stuck.
But before we get to that, just a quick history lesson. The Colonels and the ABA played with a red, white, and blue ball. The idea was to give the league more of an entertainment value than the plain basketball used by everyone else, including the NBA. And many in the NBA called the ABA a beach ball league, dismissed it as an amateur league and said they had inferior talent. But eventually, the NBA bought out the ABA and took in 4 teams: the New York Nets, who are now the Brooklyn Nets, the Indiana Pacers, the Denver Nuggets, and the San Antonio Spurs. The Kentucky Colonels were left out and thus folded after the league's final season in 1976. They had won the league championship the year before.
It's all over in Kentucky, and the Colonels are going to hang their first ABA championship banner from the Raptors at Freedom Hall.
The 3 most famous members of the franchise were Louis Dampier, sitting on the first row wearing number 10. He is the team's and league's all-time leading scorer. Prior to that, he was an All-American at UK and a member of Rupp's Runts. Standing in the middle of the back row, wearing number 44, is Dan Issel, also an All-American at UK and the all-time leading scorer in UK men's basketball history. Next to Issel is number 53, Artis Gilmore. Many UK fans will remember Gilmore when he played for Jacksonville, and they upset Issel and the Wildcats in the 1970 NCAA tournament. And now, former trainer Lloyd Gardner, standing on the far right in the back row, looking like a high school kid, has much of the Colonel's memorabilia in his basement. He's happy to provide a guided tour.
Gary, these are the jerseys that I have left. When the ABA folded, I was the only person that John Y. Brown kept. And Red Fogle, you probably knew from running the fairgrounds, said, Lloyd, come by and get this stuff out of your storeroom or we're going to throw it in the garbage. So I had bought the Colonel's van. I went over and I had all the uniforms in a big trunk. I put it and everything that was in the souvenir stand in the back of my truck. I took it home and didn't realize it was worth anything until 1998. But the jerseys I have on the wall, the Colonels had 3 colors. The original colors were black and green. And I have the number 44 original jersey of Cotton Nash. It was also the first jersey that Dan Issel ever put on as a Kentucky Colonels. With each one of these uniforms, I also have the trunks that go with it. Then we went to, when Mike Storm came, we went to royal blue and white, which that was Issel's rookie year. Then in 1973-74, 74-75, the year we won the championship, we put some red in the uniforms, and this red, white, and blue uniform, 44, 53, and 10. 10 in the blue and 10, 53. Those are all the jerseys worn during the championship years. These are the original benches that came out of the locker room, 2 of 5 original benches, and some warm-ups, some secondary shirts. You notice in 75, 76 we had the logo with the ABA Champs 1975 on it. Some of the other things I have, these are the actual shoes that Dan Issel wore in the championship game. And it's the last year, actually, last pair that Dan Issel ever wore, because he got traded that summer to the Baltimore Claws, and they folded and he went to the Denver Nuggets. So that's some of the history of the uniforms. So it's I originally had 135 of them, and this is the only ones I have left right here. The 75, 76 we went to a mass uniform. And one of the interesting stories, Gary, if you look at this number 10, it has a tail on it. Louis couldn't stand for his uniform to come out, so he had me take another uniform and cut the bottom off and sew a longer tail on it so that his uniform didn't come out.
If you're wondering how Gardner came to acquire all this, well, it was sort of by accident. After the Colonels folded, management told Gardner to clean out the team office and locker rooms.
But I bought the van, and Red Fogle called and said, Lloyd, we're going to throw this stuff away. I backed it up in 1976, in June of 76, took it to my dad's barn and put it in the loft. Did not know anything was worth anything till 1998, and a sports collector said, Lloyd, that stuff's going to be worth money. Well, back then, a Colonel's jersey was worth $100 maybe. Today, every single jersey in the ABA will start at $2,000. For instance, an Issel jersey that I sold for $320 recently went for $58,800 at auction. Gary, one of my favorite possessions as far as pictures go, and I have probably 500 pictures. I have a picture of Artis Gilmore in the Island Garden. He's blocking Rick Barry's shot. And in the background is Dan Issel, Louis Dampier, Les Hunter, and Ollie Taylor. And I have it autographed by 4 Hall of Famers, Artis, Dan, Louis, and Rick Barry. But these 2 big pictures of Artis and Dan, I've had them autographed by Dan and Artis, but they hung in the media room where the media met before the game for dinner or buffet. They could go in there at halftime for refreshments, and then they would go in there afterwards and write their stories. And then these other things are just team pictures and I have pictures with Joe Mulaney, Artis, and Dan. One of my favorite pictures is Hubie Brown standing behind me looking down the floor. But it was just a great experience, and I'm so blessed for a young man that got cut from the basketball team in 1958. It just proves that unexpected turns are not dead ends. Gary, everybody accused me of being a pack rat. Well, these things are worth a lot of money today. ABA balls are worth about $2,500. And my kids wasted a run two on the asphalt playing basketball outside before I realized they were worth anything. But the ball I'm holding, as soon as the game was over, I went in and put this ball away and I saved it. And I kept it and kept it for myself. But this is the game ball the night that we won the championship, May the 22nd, 1975. These are the scorebooks, some of the scorebooks from the ABA that Charlie Reuter, our official scorer, gave me years ago. And the one that we're looking at right here is the championship game, May the 22nd, 1975, Game 5 at Freedom Hall. The Kentucky Colonels were led by Artis Gilmore. He had 28 points and over 30 rebounds. Gary, this is probably one of the most famous pictures ever taken by the Kentucky Colonels. We drafted Wendell Ladner, and he was quite a ladies' man. Wendell was from Knee Case Cross, Mississippi. And Burt Reynolds had his picture made for the front of Penthouse magazine in his underwear, so we put Wendell on the benches in the locker room with a ball. And I think every female in town under the age of 70 bought a picture of this. And today these pictures are worth anywhere from $100 to $200. Gary, one of the things I have that I really cherish is when Hubie Brown came in 74, 75, first thing he did, he had a playbook. It had all the team rules in it. First time I'd ever been exposed to team rules. And you had to have your playbook with you at all times or you were fined. And this happens to be Artis Gilmore's playbook that he left in his locker when I cleaned out the locker room at the end of the season. So one of the great pieces. Also, I have original contracts, and I was like a clubhouse lawyer. I knew the players' contracts better than they did. I remember one day Darrell Carrier was playing out his option. It was first week of practice. And Dan Issel said, "Darrell, what do you mean play out when are you going to sign?" He said, I'm going to play out my option." Well, back then you taped ankles in the locker room. You heard everything the players said. And he said, "What is playing out your option?" There wasn't a single player that knew what it meant. I stopped taping, I stood up, I said, "Fellas, if you play out your option, you play for 90% of your salary the previous year and you're not covered by insurance." Well, Darrell Carrier was injured, so he went and signed his contract the next day so he would have some insurance.
Have any of them ever contacted you and said, like Issel, for example, and said, "You've got my championship shoes. I'd like to have those back"?
I've answered that question before, Gary. I say, "You got a pension? I didn't get anything. That's my pension. I was smart enough to keep it." So they've really never asked me for it.
Earlier you met Patrick O'Brien, the 72-year-old baseball player, and although this show is dedicated to a variety of sports and people of all ages, we do have another sport for you that is very popular among the older crowd. It is called pickleball. It is played with an oversized ping pong paddle and a wiffle ball. I caught up with a group at a YMCA in Louisville where players get together every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning with multiple courts going in 2 gyms. 66-year-old Kathleen Mandler is warming up before taking the court. She's new at this game, but is already hooked.
I just started playing and I love it. I'm a tennis player. I used to be a racquetball player, and then I retired and I came to the Y and played this, and this is the most fun game I've ever played in my life, literally.
If you're curious, pickleball was invented out in Seattle. 3 dads came up with the idea. They were sitting around one day, their kids were bored, it was the summer, kids had nothing to do, so the dad said, "We're going to create a game for you to play." So they got them 3 ping pong paddles for their kids, and they got a wiffle ball like this, and they started having them hit it back and forth over a net. And the kids loved it, and that's how pickleball was invented. As far as the name pickleball, well, one of the families had a dog, and he used to run onto the court, get the wiffle ball in his mouth and run off with it, and they'd have to chase the dog down to get the ball back. Well, the dog's name was Pickles, so that's how they came up with the name. 1-0. Teresa Parker is a player and the coordinator of this group. She says pickleball is most popular in Florida and California, where you have a high concentration of senior citizens. But it is also growing here and throughout the country. As a matter of fact, she says it's the country's fastest growing sport.
It's a great sport for seniors because the court is smaller and you don't have to move as much. If you have bad knees or bad hips or what have you, you can still be competitive, you can play, you know. So we see a lot of seniors gravitating to the sport.
Kathy Gashin is one of the oldest players I encountered on my visit. She's 77 and transitioned into this sport.
Well, I've always been favored tennis, and then I played racquetball. But then I had a knee operated on, and I couldn't do that anymore. So a couple years ago, I got introduced to pickleball, and I thought, man, I don't know if I can do this or not. First day I played 2.5 hours. So it was mentally exhilarating. It's big, because it's a smaller court. You always play with a partner, and if I can't have fun, I don't play.
The oldest person I watched is 85-year-old Jane Bevan.
I love it. I love action, and I just love sports.
There are some much younger players, even some teens who join them. Jeff Gildy, at 54, falls somewhere in the middle.
Well, actually, my daughter-in-law said something about it to me, and my wife has been going to the Y. I hadn't been a member of the Y, and I was like, well, I'll go look at it. So I walked by the gym and saw them playing, and I thought, that looks like fun, so I'd give it a try.
Has it been as much fun as it looked like it would be?
Way more fun. It's awesome. It's a great game, cross between tennis and ping pong. I mean, it's a lot of fun.
I even took my first crack at hitting the ball. And in all fairness, since I gave everyone else's age, I must tell you that I'm 57. But after just a couple of minutes of hitting, I was winded, felt more like 77. It's because I didn't have on my good shoes. Anyway, pickleball has these people hooked. And Parker says it's more than just what happens on the court.
The best thing about it, Gary, I have to tell you this, is there's such a great social aspect to this game. It's not so much just for the exercise, but people really like to socialize. You know, when you're waiting on a game, you're sitting off the court and you get engaged with people. And that's a real positive.
And it's even brought in couples like the husband and wife team of Adriana and Michael Meneghetti, who say so far they've not gotten into any arguments over how well or how poorly the other one plays.
In a playful way, yes.
It depends on how serious we want to get with this.
Since we're new, probably that's why we're just, trying to encourage each other and learn.
Yeah, we're still learning the sport, but I think it's good for our age. We're not young anymore to a point, but you don't have to move around, and you find a lot of camaraderie with pickleball. It's a growing. It's been a sport around a long time, but a lot of camaraderie, a lot of encouragement from other players, and meeting different people. That's what I enjoy. Also, I like to talk to different people.
I have seen like 4 other couples that also come here and they play together. They also play together very well as well. Yeah, we make fun. We poke at each other, and I see the same thing with the other couples. But I think it's a great thing to pick up if you're a couple and you want to do something together.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, pickleball wraps up our show. I certainly thank you for watching. Hope you tune in again sometime soon. I'm Gary Fogle. See you later. If you have a story idea from Kentucky or Southern Indiana that you'd like to see on this show, then send me an email. You can reach me at GaryFogelSports@yahoo.com. That's GaryFogle sports@yahoo.com. Love to hear from you.